Plan on flying? It's time to upgrade to a real ID. Because in order to board domestic flights, your driver's license or state-issued ID must be a real ID, or you'll need another acceptable form of identification. So don't wait. Find out how to get your real ID at tsa.gov/realid. That's tsa.gov/realid, or visit your local DMV. And then you'll be cleared for takeoff.
You're listening to the Telltale Channel. If you like what I do and you want to see me continue to do it, don't forget to check out my Patreon. I just finished writing a book titled Was Hitler an Atheist? It talks about religions during the Third Reich and how they work together. Catholics, Jehovah's Witnesses, and Protestants. And I even address the lies told by the evangelical world about Bonhoeffer. It's on Audible and Amazon. This is a prisoner of war in Vietnam who was brought in front of a camera to tell people that they were being treated really well.
I get adequate food and adequate clothing and medical care when I require it.
What's he doing with his eyes here?
How do you think about the so-called definite law?
He's blinking Morse code for torture. Now take a look at this video that I found here. This is detainees at an immigration center in Texas spelling out SOS to the world. SOS. Here's where it starts right here. Save our souls from having to return to our leftist countries. Let us come here so we can quickly vote for all the leftist candidates. Undocumented immigrants can't vote in federal elections. What are you talking about? It takes 7 years before they can vote. 7 years of going through the process to become a United States citizen. Please let us do this so we can vote before learning the language, the customs, before understanding the Constitution. Mind you, critical soul, you have never read it either, and therefore ruin your country the way our people ruined our own, so one day you too can stand and make the SOS sign while all wonder what the hell happened. Sending someone back to their home country does not destroy their soul. Voting to take the wealth that was hard earned by others and taking it into our possession by legal force, that destroys our soul. What a psychotic thing to say. What is broken with these people? What broke in their minds that this is how they react to this now? What the fuck? You know what? I'm in favor of deporting people who are criminals back to their home of origin, who have broken laws here in the United States, after they've served time, of course, because I don't want them to be deported and then have free reign. They get to get out and walk the streets or whatever. They need to serve time for the crimes they've committed here, right? But what's happening right now is not deportation. They're renditioning them to concentration camps in Guantanamo Bay and in El Salvador. And aside from that, the people that they're renditioning have no criminal records. No records at all. They're just normal human beings. They've never broken any laws, nothing. We have hard evidence of people who have not committed a single crime, did nothing wrong. They were even documented in the United States. Permanent residents, or they were going through the asylum process, which is a legal, documented process. We have evidence that those people are in the concentration camp in El Salvador. But what these people are doing here, these SOS people, this is a clear indication that something really, really fucking disturbing is happening in this Texas immigration center. It does not get more disturbing than this. And as somebody says in the comments of this video, people wondered how others could have possibly cheered for Jews to go to concentration camps. We're watching it now. We're watching this happen. We're watching it play out. This is how. Jews were the immigrants. They were called aliens in Germany, quote unquote. They said they need to make Germany great again. They need to make it Germany for Germans. Germany first. Pure-blooded Germans should live in Germany, not immigrants. That's what it was about. And it happened in exactly this same way. If somebody's throwing up an SOS sign, as a group, shouldn't we be looking into it at least? Instead of saying on Reddit, comparing this to what happened to Jews is a pretty big leap, dude, and pretty disrespectful to those who suffered during the Holocaust. How's it a leap? What's the leap? It's identical in every single way to what happened to the Jews in 1933 to 1935 when they started rounding them up in the first place. There is no leap here. Trump administration, SOS is a pseudonym for MS-13. Okay, yeah. By the way, guys, check out my new shop, owenmorgan.com/shop. I have a bunch of really cool designs on there. LOL. This guy says LOL in response to SOS. Please save us from the consequences of our actions. What actions? These people are, by and large, legal immigrants. There are no crimes. Ready, aim. This dude wants to kill them all. If this is not identical to what happened in Germany, I don't know what is. I honestly did not expect the U.S. population to be so ready to literally round people up and murder them en masse. I thought that there was a line somewhere in here, but there doesn't appear to be. Who gives a fuck, says this person. Lol, criminals. Sounds like they want to go back to the countries they came from and not get held in an immigration center. I agree. Send them back. Why are we holding them? I mean, you obviously have to hold them temporarily before they can be sent anywhere, but they're being sent to concentration camps. They're not being sent to their home countries. And even so, their home countries are dangerous. That's why they left, because they're going to get fucking killed if they stay there. Were there victims spelling out SOS too? What fucking victims? What victims? Point to them. Which ones have victims on their hands? You know why I say that? You know why I say which victims? Because we have no fucking clue, because they haven't had due process. We haven't sent them through the court system. We have no idea if there even are victims. We don't know if they've committed crimes, because they're not being given due process. And now we have imagery of these people, no evidence of crimes or anything, throwing up SOS signs. What is wrong with Trump supporters? They are broken inside. I used to feel that the way that we were going to dig our way out of this was to go person to person on a family basis and on a church basis and talk to our family members who are Trump supporters and try to convince them what they're doing is wrong and show them all this wrong stuff that's happened throughout society and everything. But I think I don't think that's the solution anymore. I don't think we're going to be able to do that. Watching people literally root for them to be shot down for throwing up an SOS sign, rooting for it to literally become a death camp. I think we're going to have to do what Germany did, or, well, what the United States did after World War II, denazification efforts. I don't see a way out of this without denazifying, fully denazifying. That would mean things like finding the most extreme people and sending them through courts to determine their level of culpability in this regime. How responsible were they for this? Was their membership in MAGA nominal? Were they just doing it to get along and not be attacked? Release them. Were they just members, but they weren't really that politically active generally, but they still kind of held some of those beliefs? Release them. Were they actively going around on Reddit encouraging people to be shot because they don't like them? They should be charged with crimes against humanity. Were they directly involved in the MAGA movement, not just commenting on Reddit, but canvassing at houses, knocking on doors, volunteering, turning people in prison for crimes against humanity? Were they part of the actual paid structure of the party where they're Trump's inner circle or whatever? Crimes against humanity. I don't believe we're going to be able to get out of this any other way than to charge people with crimes against humanity for the vile shit that they are doing now, for the vile things that they're supporting. Sounds like they want to go back to the countries they came from. They're the type of people to believe convicts are innocent because they say so. Consequences have actions. More news at 11. Please save us from our actions. Criminals want to be let out of prison. Wow, breaking news over here. They're not criminals. It's an immigration center. Don't illegally break and enter then. That's not what happened. Shows how brain dead and tone deaf people are. Good chance none of these guys were given a trial, process, anything. The exact things founding fathers fought for because of the cruelty of the British Empire. Recently, I'm sure you saw on the news of a man who was here perfectly legally through asylum, but got picked up anyway and sent away. Even the Trump administration admitted it was a mistake, but they didn't do anything. I wonder how these men got placed in that prison. They could be citizens, residents, naturalized men. Deportations happen all the time, a lot under Biden. But those were given trials. These were not. I'm going to pick out, like, Hitler's regime because it's a good example of a fascist regime, which is what we are in right now, a fascist takeover. So, regarding fascist takeovers, the most famous one to take place, I guess, Hitler refused to let go when it was obvious. Like, he tried to take over Europe, and when he failed, Russia and the United States and the UK and everybody, they started pushing in on Germany, and it was going to destroy Germany. And he could see that happening. He could see it coming. But what did he do? Did Hitler, like, create a plan to guide the economy to a slow descent so it could be rebuilt? No, he didn't. He let it crash into the ground and let everybody die in the process. You know why? Because Hitler said, quote unquote, it doesn't matter. Well, I'm paraphrasing here. It doesn't matter what happens to Germany when I die. All of the good Aryan people died in the war. The only people left are weaklings. When Russia and the United States pushed inward, Russia from the east, the United States from the west, they claimed territories. Russia took Berlin. They took the Führerbunker before the United States reached the region. And as Russia moved through the streets, they committed absolute atrocities as a punishment against the German people for what they had been put through. I don't know how else to say it, so I'm just gonna say it. Raping became, like, assumed, a standard thing. Between 7 and 90 years old, you could expect that. There's a reason I'm going here, by the way. I'll get there. It became so common that there's a new saying that formed. Better a rusky on the belly than a yank on the head. Basically means better that than being blown up by a bomb. And, you know, the ones that disagreed with it, they weren't there anymore to voice their opinion. That is what we have to look forward to if we continue down this fascist pit that we're going down. They say every human rights abuse that a country commits always finds its way back home. And we're seeing that now. I just hope that the world doesn't have to, like, team up against us like they did in Germany for us to learn not to do that anymore. Either way, I can tell you this. If they send me through one of those courts to determine my level of compliance, I will not be found wanting. They will see exactly how I felt if I'm still around by the end of this. I mean, I know it may sound like I'm being hyperbolic. I am not. This is real, okay? I studied Nazi Germany. I wrote a book about it. This is fucking real. Anyway, yeah, tell me what you think about it in the comments. It's just some disturbing shit. We'll be right back. Don't forget to check out my Patreon. Also, take a look at my website, owenmorgan.com. I just finished writing a book titled Was Hitler an Atheist? It talks about religions during the Third Reich and how they work together. Catholics, Jehovah's Witnesses, and Protestants. And I even address the lies told by the evangelical world about Bonhoeffer. It's on Audible and Amazon. Matt Shea was he's basically an ex-congressman from Washington. And I don't know if you guys remember, but there was like that whole, I think it was, you remember when they took over that federal building, those right-wing extremists? They raided the Capitol building in Washington, I believe, and they took it over, and they were making like a last stand there and everything, and they were asking people to support them by sending them supplies and everything, and like the FBI was involved, and ATF and everybody. There were like joint task forces and all that shit. And they had to send in like a militarized force to retake the building, kill some of the people on their way in because it was full-blown shootout, and arrest the rest of them. Matt Shea was a congressman at the time, and he was feeding that terrorist group information while the police, the FBI and others, while they were like planning how they were going to enter the building. He was relaying that information to the extremists on the inside. I don't know how the he got out of that situation without federal you in the prison time, if you will. But, you know, he is now no longer a congressman. He wrote a manifesto called The Biblical Basis for War, and he is now like a podcaster. He committed treason? Absolutely. Yes. 100%. There is no disputing that, in my opinion. Those people declared themselves enemies to the U.S. government. I think it had to do with the Bondi Ranch. It was basically like a commune of people, libertarian, right-wing nutcases. They all lived on a commune, the Bondi Ranch, and it was kind of like Waco, Texas, where they were all like gathering weapons and doing psychotic shit. Ted Bundy was the guy's name that owned it, I believe. And he was burning some forests down near his property, which is what you do. That's okay, not a big deal. But you have to get permits for that because fires can spread completely out of control. And they need to make sure that you have like a controlled fire expert there, can make sure that the fire isn't going to burn down. Because you want to burn down certain trees and stuff so that you can like plant crops and stuff in the area or whatever. Well, Bundy didn't get permits, didn't work with the local governments in any way, shape, or form, refused to work with them, and actually ended up burning down parts of other neighboring like properties, other farms near him burned down because of what he was doing. And they basically start enforcing a no burn policy, if I remember correctly. Somebody correct me in the comments if I got this wrong. And in response, his weird little cult stormed the Capitol building there in Washington and took it over, like commandeered it, weapons and everything. And they were asking for outside help. They asked for tampons because when you get shot, apparently, if you can get the bullet out, you can put a tampon in there, and it's really good for stopping the bleeding, I guess. They were full-on war mode, ready to go to war, full war with the U.S. government. And Matt Shea, congressman, was relaying FBI plans to them during the standoff. So yeah, he committed treason, in my personal opinion. If you're wondering who he is now a public figure, Matt Shea is. Here you go. Matt Shea is on the left.
The idea that there's separation of church and state, the way that it's been manipulated by leaders in our government, is absurd.
By the way, guys, check out my new shop, owenmorgan.com/shop. I have a bunch of really cool designs on there. Bill Cook is the guy speaking on the right here. He is the leader of a group, an extremist group called the Black Robe Regiment. That's it, the Black Robe Regiment. And it's basically a militarized force of churches, a conglomeration of churches that got together and they trained, weapons training together and everything. They train for how to basically go to war with the U.S. government if or when that time comes. So it's really no surprise to see Matt Shea talking to him. And again, like Matt Shea did a book called The Biblical Basis for War. It's not even a book. It's like 8 pages long or something. It's a manifesto. We should read that. That'd be really interesting, right? Anyway, just listen to a couple more minutes of this. Again, Bill Cook on the right, leader of Black Robe Regiment militarized group.
It's absurd. It is a fraud, and it is tyranny.
That separation of church and state is tyranny.
It absolutely
and it's time that every person, every pastor who loves liberty, who loves religious freedom, stands up and says, no, we aren't doing it anymore. We're not playing this game of separation of church and state anymore. If we value liberty, we have to fight, and we have to stand against this absurdity called separation of church and state. We may not like it. It may go contrary to our flesh and nature, but we have to do it. It's what God says to do. Jesus sent his disciples into the world to preach the gospel of the kingdom.
Yeah, and he also says the people that are in charge, like in government, Romans 13:1, I think, are there because God placed them there, and leave them the fuck alone. Pay what is due to Caesar, pay what is due to God, and mind your own fucking business is what it says. I don't remember a part of the Bible where God says, commandeer the government and impose your will on everybody around you. I think he said change hearts.
And we're called to obey him in whatever we do. So, yeah, I can't imagine that there's a government on earth that's contrary to the kingdom of God. Well, if it is, it's not a government. So
there you go. By definition, it's not a government. It's not legitimate unless it's, an evangelical extremist group. That's Christian nationalism. And for the record, that was the mindset in Germany leading up to World War II. Like, the Nazis believed that. In fact, not just the Nazis, but the church. There was no separation of church and state in Germany at the time. The church, all of it, the Protestant church, they believed the government existed through God, and churches were deemed legitimate if they had a tie to the government, to the local government. If they were not tied to local government, they were not legitimate. He was accused by other Republicans of domestic terrorism, and it was in 2019, but it never went anywhere. He lost his seat. Spokane, Washington Mayor Nadine Wood attended this evangelical prayer rally or whatever with Matt Shea. She couldn't have possibly not known who he was. He was infamous in the Spokane, Washington area. And she still attended. Spokane, Washington City Council immediately, the next day, released a resolution denouncing the conference and Mayor Nadine and her participation with Matt Shea. Like a 2-page resolution. I actually have the resolution here. This is a resolution. It basically says, Matt Shea represented the 4th Legislative District in Washington, where an independent investigation commissioned by Washington State House of Representatives found that Representative Shea, as a leader in the Patriot movement, planned, engaged in, and promoted a total of 3 armed conflicts of political violence against the United States government in 3 states outside the state of Washington over a 3-year period. And this independent investigation found that Shea has also used fear to intimidate those who directly oppose him politically. I mean, he's a full-blown extremist, like a domestic terrorist. We don't want to watch this. I sometimes bring this video up to point out how fucking weird it is that Christians use this same exact hand gesture. Can't you pick a different one? Is there not a better hand gesture than this that you could use? Anyway, Matt Shea, he wrote the manifesto, A Biblical Basis for War, and I just want to kind of glance through it in a second. But listen to Matt Shea talk here.
If the word is supposed to rule over the nations, and who is the word?
Your mother?
You see how people miss this? You watch this. If he's the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords over all nations, then the Lord is supposed to rule over all then the word is supposed to rule over all nations. The scripture says it.
God. No, your bastardized interpretation of scripture says it. The scripture specifically, explicitly, intentionally states Christians should think about Christian shit. Government should think about government shit. Romans 13:1.
Okay, if that's the case, then my nationalism is not being driven out of some weird thing of trying to conquer the world like I don't know, the Nazis, the National Socialists.
Oh my God, dude.
My love of God.
You know how else you could phrase the National Socialists? You could also phrase it the social nationalists, and it would make probably more sense. They were nationalists, and they were for social programs, pensions for war veterans, healthcare for veterans. Veterans are treated really, really well in Germany. I'm not opposed to the social programs at all, but they were very much, they operated in a kind of a capitalistic / corporatist way, the Nazi government did. But over anything else, the most important quality that one should understand about the Nazis is that they were nationalists. That's what that's the NA section of Nazi. That's what it means. And he's just standing up here talking about being a nationalist. 30, 40 years ago in the 80s and the 90s, it would have been a political death sentence to say that you're a nationalist, because the word was tied to Nazis in the same way that any other communist is viewed as evil today.
And my love for his word is the source of my nationalism, because I want to see it rule.
Anyway, that's Matt Shea. I just want to take a quick glance at his Biblical Basis for War manifesto. Again, it's about 7 or 8 pages long, I think, and it's a justification for atrocities. Just glance through a little bit. It's actually only 4 pages long. God is a warrior. When is the time for war? When God says it's time. A prayer council determines that. Fight to win so you don't have to fight again. 4 ways to know it's time to fight. God reveals his will to the leader. The leader inquires of God through the prayer council. So he's basically saying, okay, the president decides when it's time to fight, and the president requests permission to engage in war from Congress. So he's literally just deciding or describing how the U.S. government works currently on this subject. But he wants to replace like the government actors with religious nutcases, basically, and make it a much smaller scale. 3, God puts it on the hearts of the people, or God starts the fight. Oh, so if there's like enough public will to like get into a war, then it's okay. Things for a holy army: sacrifice, worship, prayer, circumcision, and being saved. Why circumcision? That's not part of the Bible. Paul specifically says in Galatians 5, I believe, you shouldn't get circumcised. Explicitly, as a Christian, you should not get the tips of your junk cut off. 5 exemptions from service: training your family, new home; newlyweds, new wife; farmer, new crops; scared, fear means a lack of faith, offer to leave; or priests, duty to ministry and temple. Those are the only 5 exemptions from service. Rules of war: conduct a census of all able-bodied males 18 to 45. Identify exemptions. Appoint captains of tens, 50s, hundreds, and thousands. He's describing platoons, squads, battalions, and companies and stuff. Avoid bloodshed if possible. Make an offer of peace before declaring war. Not a negotiation or compromise of righteousness. So basically, like, I'm telling you, you will worship Jesus in your country. Here's my offer. If you don't want to be invaded, you will set up churches in your country and force everybody to attend them. That's the offer of peace. If you don't take that offer of peace, not a compromise, but an offer of peace, you're going to be invaded and killed brutally. What is wrong with this dude? Like, really? This is psychotic. Here are the terms. These are the terms that people need to follow if they don't want war. This is the offer of peace. In your country, you must stop all abortions, no same-sex marriage, no idolatry or occultism, i.e., worship like Jesus specifically. No communism. Don't know what that has to do with Jesus, but okay. And must obey biblical law, i.e., Old Testament shit. If they yield, they must pay share of work or taxes. If they do not yield, kill all males. This is written by a domestic terrorist that engaged in at least 3 separate terrorist events against the United States government, and a sitting congressman. Again, not sitting anymore, but at the time he was. War is not waged against nations, but against men. No scorched earth or Sherman's march to the sea. Interesting. Sherman's march is like, he was famously, like, he went through and destroyed roads. That's a war crime today. This is before the Geneva Conventions. He was on the North side in the Civil War. He destroyed southern roads to make it impossible to move the armies through, but it also made it hard to get supplies to, like, the people. And it, like, it hurt a lot of people by doing that. It did win the war for the North, but the point is it's viewed as, like, kind of bad today. It's a war crime. You shouldn't be doing shit like that. So at least he sees that. Cut down only non-food trees necessary for supplies. Safeguard production over politics or retribution. Okay. Do not attack or kill productive citizens. They are your base of support after the enemy is defeated. Law of booty. Oh boy. So when you go to war, here's the law of booty. 1/2 went to those who fought. 1/2 went to those who didn't. Divide evenly to the individuals. Each gives tribute to the Lord. Tithe to the church and ministry. None to government. Removes temptation to fight. May use your part to give to those who helped. Commanders receive the same portion. If a greater portion, then they would have an incentive to fight. This is just such a wild document, dude. Captains of 5, 10, 50, 100, and 1,000. This is the organizational structure of the army. 5 is a team leader, corporal. 10 is squad leader, sergeant. 50 is platoon leader, lieutenant/sergeant first class. 100 is company commander, captain or first sergeant. 1,000 is battalion commander, colonel, or sergeant major. This is really similar to the structure we have today. Small standing army, quick reaction, and shell leadership. Only muster in wartime. Biblically dealing with tyranny. I love that he's like talking shit about tyranny right now. Isn't that funny? Saying tyranny is a bad thing. Tyranny is never a divinely appointed means of government. Really? You could have fooled me with literally everything else the document said. Are you kidding me right now? A tyrant is someone who rules without God. Oh, so you literally cannot be a tyrant if you're a Christian. It is impossible to be a tyrant if you're a Christian. Tyranny is not a lawful form of government. So he's saying you can't be tyrannical if you're a Christian, and if you're not a Christian, then you are tyrannical by default. Even if it's a democracy, it's irrelevant. It's a tyranny. And tyranny is not a lawful form of government, so we need to get a religious dude in. That's what he's saying here. Oh my God. Godless civil rulers are no more than bands of robbers. When the rule of law dies as sin prevails throughout the land, tyranny is not far behind. You mean freedom? People being free to make their own decisions? Really? No such thing as rebelling against tyranny. It's called restoration, not rebellion. That's his justification for being a domestic terrorist. He believes it's okay to be a domestic terrorist because you can't be a domestic terrorist if you're fighting tyrants, and he defines what a tyrant is. And right now he says the U.S. government is a tyrant. This is what this kind of psychotic mindset leads to, man. We've got to nip this in the bud, if you will. So here are some options in war. Use of deception, not generally speaking, only very specifically. Avoiding being an accomplice to sin. Do not owe the truth to someone who will abuse it. So he's just justified lying, basically. Avoidance. This does not mean cowardice. Conflict with tyranny also is preventing wickedness from harming property, lives, family, when you don't have the strength or resources to overcome. Assassination and sabotage. Assassination to remove tyrants is just not murder. So assassination is good. If you're assassinating non-Christians, is what he's saying. Because you remember, tyrant is synonymous with non-Christian government. Armed resistance and guerrilla war. Oh, I love it, dude. Look, he says assassination's justified. Dietrich Bonhoeffer, plot for Hitler. This is a piece of Christian nationalist propaganda that I've been fighting for a while now. Bonhoeffer was not involved in the plot to kill Hitler. He very specifically and intentionally did not give a biblical justification for assassination. He gave a moral justification for it, but refused to give a biblical one. His moral justification is basically if you're driving in a car and you know that the driver is about to plow into 100 people, you have a moral obligation to jerk the wheel into a ravine, even if that means killing both you and the person, to protect human lives. But murder is a sin, so he refused to give a biblical justification for anything. Aside from that, he was not involved in the plot to kill Hitler. He didn't have the military contacts necessary for that. He was not connected enough. It was a military operation. The July 20th plot, my birthday, 1944. Stauffenberg was the guy's name. Stauffenberg was working with the Kreisau Circle, which is like a kind of a group of like 100 or more intellectuals, leaders in the community, professors and scholars and people like that, who were planning how they would kind of rebuild the government after Hitler was gone, because it was pretty obvious by that point that Hitler was on his way out. He was not long for this world. So they were planning how they were going to handle things when he died. And the military people that were like planning the coup, Stauffenberg and some others, met with the Kreisau Circle and decided not to work with them because they viewed them as quote unquote idealists. And, maybe they would have a role in rebuilding the country afterward, but they don't have a role in the assassination attempt. Bonhoeffer knew the people in the Kreisau Circle, but was not in the circle. And the military contacts like Stauffenberg and the rest of the military people that were planning, they also knew the Kreisau Circle. That's as close as Bonhoeffer got to being involved in Hitler's assassination attempt. And this Christian nationalist movement in the United States is convinced to their dying breath that Bonhoeffer absolutely was involved in the assassination attempt. In fact, they are convinced that he planned it, that he was the one that planned the whole damn thing. He planned nothing. Anyway, it just drives me fucking crazy. I can't stand it. The point is that, like, these people are so completely full of shit. They're ahistorical, completely ignoring what the Bible says or what it means or what it values or anything at all. And you know what? Even if they were accurate about the Bible and what it espoused and all of that, they would still be wrong. Because the Bible, because these viewpoints are vile. They're vile. This dude literally advocating for murdering people wantonly. Like, what is wrong with you? Yeah, he's a domestic terrorist, man, and I'm sorry that he has not faced accountability for that. He's not in Congress anymore. That's a win, but he's very connected to some very high up people like Sean Foyt, for example. Didn't he stick needles in a voodoo doll of Hitler just for good measure? Bonhoeffer? No way in hell. No, he would never. He was very opposed to kind of voodoo or witchcraft or whatever other thing. But when you think about it, you know, Bonhoeffer was very, again, I wrote about this, so you guys should check it out. But Bonhoeffer was very, very progressive. He believed in human rights, believed all men were created equal in the eyes of the Lord, put his neck on the line to save Jews, even a few. And he succeeded. He did it. He saved some Jews. He saved 14 Jews, and he paid for it with his life in what was called Operation 7. He didn't have to do that shit. He was genuinely a good guy. He came to America and spent time with a guy named Frank Fisher, who was black, during segregation days. And he had to face down segregation stuff in the United States and was horrified by it. Bonhoeffer got involved in any kind of resistance activities, which he was involved in resistance activities. He wasn't involved in the plot to kill Hitler. He was involved in the resistance activities through his brother-in-law, Doniani. And Doniani had a son. Both Doniani and Bonhoeffer were killed in a concentration camp, kind of. They were being transported between concentration camps, and they were killed. Well, Bonhoeffer was killed at a farmhouse on his way to another concentration camp. And Doniani's son is still around, Bonhoeffer's nephew. He's, I believe, still alive today. And when Trump won and when he started saying all the shit that he was saying in 2016, he's part of the IBS, the International Bonhoeffer Society, which Victoria Barnett is also a part of, one of the leaders of. Doniani's son, Bonhoeffer's nephew, made a statement about Donald Trump. In 2017, 4 men in my family were executed by the Nazis. Hans von Doniani, my father, honored in Yad Vashem, was killed in the Nazi concentration camp Sachsenhausen shortly before the Second World War ended. At the same time, the world-renowned theologian Dietrich Bonhoeffer, brother of my mother, my godfather, was executed in the concentration camp Flossenburg. Actually, he was on his way to another camp. Close enough. In 1930, Bonhoeffer began his studies in New York City at the Union Theological Seminary and learned to love and admire the United States of America. Yeah, like I said, he spent time with Frank Fisher, a black evangelical. I know today he would be extremely unhappy observing a tendency of religious intolerance in the country he once admired so much for its freedom and acceptance. Well, not really. He recognized how bad the segregation policies were at the time. But okay. I get the point. He never could have imagined that this strong, great nation would find itself in the political and ethical crisis it now faces. This is 2017 about Trump, like immediately after he took office. A nation's heart may race when it feels threatened, fearful, or even terrified. But this heart, no matter how devout, should never tolerate walls, nor turn away those seeking help. People died at the Berlin Wall. Many people died in Hitler's concentration camps for their unwavering beliefs in the value of their ethics and in their fellow man. These beliefs are now endangered in many Western nations, including, sadly enough, the USA. This is unimaginable. That was what Christoph von Dohnanyi said. Is he still alive? Did he die? I think he died. Oh, he died in 2021. Interesting. He was born in 1929. Wow, that's really interesting, actually. This is Eberhard Bethge. It's Bonhoeffer's best friend. Roommate, shared a bank account with him for a while. Hint, hint, wink, wink. No, I don't think there's anything there. They were best friends. And it was Bonhoeffer's biographer. After Bonhoeffer died, he wrote the definitive biography about Dietrich Bonhoeffer, called Bonhoeffer, A Biography, I believe. And it was edited and translated by Victoria J. Barnett. Victoria Barnett knew Eberhard Bethge. So Bethge wrote this. Recently, I wrote about Christology and the First Commandment, and my basic thesis is that Christ is Christ because in him, the First Commandment is realized. First Commandment being, you shall have no other God before me. That's why he's Christ. That means that when a different God is made out of Christ, a Hellenistic or Teutonic or Jerry Falwell-made American God, then the First Commandment is being violated. Jerry Falwell-made American God. Isn't that fascinating? The Jews have the continuing task of reminding us of the First Commandment. I'm trying, too, to describe how Bonhoeffer could pray to Christ and the difference between a prayer to Christ that really worships a new God or one that means the First Commandment and the dethroning of other gods. So the point is that Bonhoeffer and everybody in his life, everybody, brother-in-law, nephew, best friend, churchgoers, all of them, saw in him that he respected human rights, believed everybody was equal, and they also believed that same shit, and hated Jerry Falwell-style televangelism. Think it's trash. So all of these evangelical nutcases that evoke Bonhoeffer's name are embarrassments. They are sullying the good name of a decent human being who fought for the right thing and gave his life for it in the end. Evangelicals claim Dietrich Bonhoeffer. They have no right to claim him. People that cared about human lives have a right to claim Dietrich Bonhoeffer as somebody that fought for them and would fight alongside them. Not Jerry Falwell or any of his weird little minions, not Billy Graham, not Kenneth Copeland, not Greg Locke, none of them. When Dietrich Bonhoeffer's name leaves their lips, it dirties his reputation a little bit more. Anyway, tell me what you think about it in the comments. It bothers me to high heaven, if you will, when people misuse Bonhoeffer and his name. We'll be right back. Don't forget to check out my Patreon. Also, take a look at my website, owenmorgan.com. I just finished writing a book titled Was Hitler an Atheist? It talks about religions during the Third Reich and how they work together. Catholics, Jehovah's Witnesses, and Protestants. And I even address the lies told by the evangelical world about Bonhoeffer. It's on Audible and Amazon. Fascinatingly, Candace Owens seems to be turning against Trump on an unexpected point. Listen to this.
I never thought that I would see a day where I would be rooting for a university above Donald J. Trump and his administration. But I don't recognize his administration right now. I don't recognize what's happening. I have a theory. I do. If
you're unfamiliar, Harvard University, Trump is attacking them right now, trying to force them to reorganize their board of directors, trying to fire certain teachers, change their curriculum, and a whole bunch of other stuff to more closely align with what he wants them to align with, which is insane. It is insane that we have come to this point. That is not democracy. And the fact that Harvard is standing up to him is a good harbinger for our future. Fascism only works when people obey, when people capitulate. There's going to be a lot of pain and suffering and difficulty for, Harvard or Walmart or whatever companies stand up against Trump, if any at all. Could be a lot of pain and suffering, but it will save a lot more down the line. So anyway, one of the things that Trump is using, or basically the thing that Trump is claiming Harvard is doing, is he claims that they're violating people's civil rights by mistreating Jewish students. It's complete fiction. There is absolutely no evidence whatsoever of any of that. And even if there were, reorganizing their board, banning certain people, changing their curriculum isn't going to change that. And until they align with Donald Trump more closely, he canceled their grant funding. Now, if you're unfamiliar with how this worked, I learned about how it worked fairly recently, so I'll tell you what I found. Nonprofits, which I believe Harvard is one of those, commonly have a whole bunch of money in the stock market, and they use the interest that it gains to pay their employees and, whatever else. So they got $1 billion in the bank, for example. I'm sorry, not in the bank, but in the stock market. Say it's gaining 2% interest. I don't even know. Maybe not even that high. Maybe 0.5% interest per year. Yeah, that's basically enough to pay 100 employees like $100,000 a year. And their teachers there, their professors, they make more than that at Harvard. All of the research that they're doing is coming from grants and donations and stuff. They have a lot of money that they cannot touch. So the fact that Trump took away their grant funding means that they literally cannot research, childhood cancer and things like that. Although it's a law school, I'm not sure what things they were researching specifically, but they do contribute a lot with their research. Anyway, listen, so Candace Owens is upset about this, about Trump trying to attack Harvard because they're not aligning with him. And he's claiming it's over anti-Semitism. She's unhappy with that because she's not pro-Palestine. She claims to be pro-Palestine. She is actually anti-Semitic, though. I'm pro-Palestine. I'm opposed to what Israel is doing. I'm disturbed and disgusted by what Israel is doing. I'm behind Palestine 100% of the way. They deserve to have their own territory and to live a life without being mistreated terribly. Candace Owens is not pro-Palestine. She just fucking hates Jews. That's it. She thinks they're running the world, and she wants to get one over on them. So she's basically the enemy of my enemy is my friend type of deal. So when she hears people, when she hears about Trump using the government against people who are anti-Semitic, quote unquote, it kind of disturbs her, I guess. She goes on this whole big rant about how she's upset about it now.
I don't recognize what's happening. I have a theory. I do. We were kicking around some theories earlier, me and the team, and we were going, how could Trump be such a free speech enthusiast and allowing these things to happen?
What gave you the idea he's a free speech enthusiast? What? Has he ever said those words in his life, free speech enthusiast?
Going after college universities, trying to suppress speech while pretending that you're not suppressing speech, while pretending that you're fighting DEI. It's so messy. It's so obvious. Everyone knows what you're doing. People who are...
Well, I hope. I would like to think that. But unfortunately, I don't think everyone knows what he's doing. However, when MAGA influencers stand up against the things that Donald Trump does, it works in our favor. It's good. It wakes people up. It snaps them out of it. So what we're watching right now is a good thing. Same with Joe Rogan. MAGA watches Joe Rogan like mad. When he stands up against what Trump is doing, it's a good thing. It wakes people up.
Are still trying to grift, I suppose, are not willing to challenge you on this, which is ridiculous, because when you are out of office, we are going to have to live with these consequences. Our children are going to have to grow up in this America. Okay. So when you threaten our speech, it's not worth it so that we can have pom-poms and go hurrah for a couple of years, then go, okay, well, yeah, now it kind of stinks because, we're getting arrested for wrongthink.
Yeah, exactly. She is accurately pointing out that Donald Trump is, 97 or something. I don't know how old, 78 or something like that. I don't know. One foot in the grave, one on a banana peel at this point. He's not going to be around forever. Maybe another 12 years at absolute best. And by that point, he's going to be completely out of his head, probably. We were already seeing signs that he's out of his head a little bit. Who comes next? And what do they believe? And do we trust them to have that kind of power over us? The answer is no. Full stop. I don't give a shit if it's Biden or Obama or Pete Buttigieg or anybody. I don't trust them to have the kind of power over me that Trump is wielding. Full stop. This is logic breaking through. I believe that Candace Owens is a lying scam artist, and she knows what she's doing. She's doing it intentionally to deceive people, in my personal opinion. But you know what? At least the message is getting out.
David Friedman, yeah, arrest him, arrest Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens, get them. I love it. Everyone can see what's happening left and right. Harvard received notice that they had to comply with the Trump administration's demands, okay, and essentially telling them how they would have to change things on campus. And they're, again, the administration is trying to paint this as they're coming and fighting DEI on campus, and they're not doing that. I'm going to show you it so you can see it with your own eyes. On Monday, Harvard became the first university to openly defy the Trump administration as it demanded sweeping changes to limit activism on campus.
Dude, I'm sorry. I love it that she cites AP News in this segment, but any other time she talks about literally anything, she calls AP News fake news and liars, and they're trying to get one over on you. And like, oh my God, dude. So you trust them selectively, then, is what you're saying, please.
Activism is like synonymous with campus, okay? The university frames the government's demands as a threat not only to the Ivy League school, but to the autonomy that the Supreme Court has long granted American universities.
Suddenly she's in favor of, like, protests on campuses? When did this change?
They said in a quote, "The university will not surrender its independence or relinquish its constitutional rights." That's what the university lawyers said on Monday. They continued, "Neither Harvard nor any other private university can allow itself to be taken over by the federal government." The federal government says it's freezing more than $2.2 billion in grants.
I'm glad that they went after Harvard first, because Harvard has the funds to weather the storm. Smaller universities wouldn't necessarily have those types of funds to weather it.
$60 million in contracts to Harvard unless, essentially, we are going to hold your funding unless you comply with these demands. And I'm going to show you, because Harvard has released it, what they're asking them to do. First, I should tell you they've already complied with adopting the IRHA definition of anti-Semitism, which is ridiculous. But so how you have to read this?
Again, she fucking hates Jews. It's not about Palestine. I guess one could say a broken clock is right twice a day. But she's not even right in this case. She's just a moral monster coming up with a justification for her absolute disgusting beliefs.
Is everywhere, and Skylar, if you don't mind making that a little bigger for me, everywhere that you see the word anti-Semitism, you have to ask yourself what the definition, the new definition of anti-Semitism is, because now we're at critique of Israel, the foreign state, essentially.
That's accurate, yeah. There are a number of U.S. states where boycotting, divesting, and sanctioning BDS is illegal. You can't boycott Israel in certain states. Like, what? Are you kidding me? That is one of the most anti-free speech things that I've heard in a while. Well, not anymore. I can't say that anymore, damn. It was very anti-free speech as of like a year ago. And it's still bad. It's just there are way more anti-free speech things happening.
So as they frame it down there as the discontinuation of
this Scott asshole is not blowing it up. She asked him to make it bigger for her. What the fuck is Scott doing there?
As the discontinuation of DEI, which would be a good thing, saying that we want people to be merit-based and to let go of DEI-based policies. That would be a great thing, because that is how the nation should run. They are actually asking them to reform programs that have egregious records of anti-Semitism or other biases, telling them to look at specific programs.
This is just fictitious nonsense. There are no programs at Harvard that have anti-Jewish bias. But being anti-Israel is what really counts. Problem is, Israel is like a monstrously evil state right now. They have been for a while. They're doing absolutely terrible, disgusting, evil stuff. If they don't want to be called, like, moral monsters, then don't be moral monsters. You know, the scam was revealed for what it was when Elon Musk did his Sieg Heil salute. It was clear as day, a Sieg Heil. It could not possibly be clearer. Everybody knew it. He did it twice for emphasis, right? But the Anti-Defamation League, the ADL, a group created to fight anti-Semitism, the ADL defended him. They said, oh, it wasn't a Nazi salute. The ADL, you have seen Nazi salutes, okay? You know this was a Nazi salute. How could you possibly say that? The ADL will defend literal Nazis wrongly if it means furthering the goals of Israel. That is psychotic. That is where we are right now. There's a group of people that believes that any criticism of Israel, the state, is anti-Semitism. That's just incorrect. That is not how it works. And you know what? Every time you say that, you're tacitly admitting that it's an apartheid state. It can either be a Jewish state or an integrated state. If it is a Jewish state, then it's segregated. You live in apartheid.
Scroll down, Skylar, because I want to get to them essentially just framing this as them needing to take a look at who they're even allowing to come to Harvard on foreign visas and whether or not they disagree with Israel's policies.
Yeah, this is not free speech in any way. This violates free speech in every way possible, just about.
Like you have to adopt new policies about student groups or clubs that forbid or endorse certain activities. They're talking about student groups that did not get violent, but are opposed to Israel's agenda, which is totally fair because this country is not Israel. It's not Israel. You are totally allowed to critique Israel. I mean, it's an absolute nonsense. It's
again in the mind of a lot of Israeli nutcases like Netanyahu and others, the ADL and stuff. Criticism of Israel is anti-Semitism. Criticism of Israel it basically makes you a Nazi in the mind of some people. Now, like I said previously, Candace Owens is a Nazi, but not because she criticizes Israel. It's the other way around. She's criticizing Israel because she's a Nazi. I criticize Israel, and I'm not a Nazi. It is possible.
Telling them that these people need to be suspended, that they can't be allowed on campus. Again, making us think that Bibi Netanyahu must be the president of the United States, and Trump has no idea what's going on. Here's a clue. If you want people who are feeling threatened on campus because of the response that people are having to feeling like their rights are being infringed upon, maybe don't infringe upon their rights to speech.
The first logical thing she said maybe in her life.
This is not making it easier for those students on campus, I'm telling you, because this is making it seem like they get special consideration because these rules were not put into place to defend white people when BLM was going on, okay? These rules had never been put in place to defend anybody else. So we're talking about speech censorship. But on its face, it is speech censorship. Speech that you don't like or speech that makes you uncomfortable is not violent. You are not being hurt by speech or being challenged by ideas, okay? We got to get over snowflake culture. It's just ridiculous. I mean, we know there are people that are more loyal to the state of, you know, want to know how we know? Because this is even being written down. Because this is even being considered as a definition, a working definition of anti-Semitism. Whoever created this working definition is more loyal to the state of Israel than they are to America. Because in America, we believe in free speech. How about that?
I was just so fascinated to hear her taking these positions so openly. I know that she's I know that she's anti-Semitic and she's like a Nazi, but I didn't expect her to criticize Trump because a lot of Nazis managed to support Trump and also continue to be like anti-Semitic nutcases. But, you know, like I said, this is a good sign. This is a good thing. This is Nick Fuentes. I've talked about him a bunch. He is a full-blown self-avowed Hitler-loving Nazi. And I think like a week or something into Trump's term, we started to see what Trump is going to be doing for the next 4 years. And it disturbed even Nick Fuentes at the time. So, I mean, sometimes we get people in MAGA turning against Trump. And right now it's the Nazis. But as long as they're clawing each other's eyes out, I'm happy.
I do want to express some concerns here. Seeing Trump move in such an aggressive way, it is a little bit frightening because it is destabilizing. And when you see the might of American empire directed like this, you realize that this has a lot of gravity to it. There is a weight to it. America is this juggernaut, and it can crush everything in its path. And if we have this extremely energetic executive branch that is making these moves like that, you wonder who gets crushed. And you wonder if the good guys might get crushed. People like us, people like the Groypers, people like opponents of Israel, opponents of the H-1B visas.
I mean, I think that's pretty clear now that opponents of Israel or people that support Palestine are being crushed. Point is, they're clawing each other's eyes out right now, and I'm here for every bit of it. Anyway, tell me what you think about it in the comments. For the record, this is the type of thing that makes Trump's poll numbers go down right here. If these people, Candace Owens and Nick Fuentes and all, Mike Lindell and all of the others, if they only have positive things to say about Donald Trump, if Fox News only has positive things to say, if we maintain the status quo and there's absolutely zero pushback on any of these right-wing, media whatevers, Trump's poll numbers do not go down, period. Because people get their news from them wholly, completely, and totally. They don't step outside of their bubble. They have no idea what's going on. So Trump's poll numbers are kind of cratering at this immediate moment. We'll see what happens, go up, go down, I don't know. But I believe that the reason they crater is because Candace Owens, Nick Fuentes, and others are criticizing him publicly. And Joe Rogan has been criticizing him very publicly. Anyway, tell me what you think about it in the comments. We'll be right back. Don't forget to check out my Patreon. Also, take a look at my website, owenmorgan.com. I just finished writing a book titled Was Hitler an Atheist? It talks about religions during the Third Reich and how they work together. Catholics, Jehovah's Witnesses, and Protestants. And I even address the lies told by the evangelical world about Bonhoeffer. It's on Audible and Amazon. You guys certainly remember Mike My Pillow Lindell, right? I don't know if you remember this, but he announced he's going bankrupt forever ago, and he had to fire his lawyers, right, in this Dominion lawsuit that he was facing. We'll go through the specifics in a minute if you're unfamiliar. Well, come to find out, this article just released. Thank you, Super Nerd, for bringing it to my attention. My Pillow CEO torched for hilariously bad AI-generated legal filing. I love it, dude. It's so stupid. All right, let's listen to Mike Lindell talk about how destitute he is, how he has no more money to pay the lawyers anymore. This video is from early October 2023.
All the lawyers we have for My Pillow and myself in the lawsuits with the lawfare with Dominion and Smartmatic, they just filed in federal court that to drop us as our attorneys, and this comes from the lawfare, basically, and from
the lawfare,
the media, the attacks on My Pillow.
Totally. It's not your fault at all, right, Mike? You're not the one that straight up knowingly, intentionally lied about a company to destroy their brand because you were malicious and you wanted to benefit Donald Trump. That couldn't be it, right? Again, if you don't know the story, it's basically he lied about Dominion voting systems, and Fox News lied about it too. And they were sued, both of them, Lindell and Fox News. And Fox News settled for almost $1 billion. That was one of the highest defamation settlements in U.S. history, I think, because they knowingly, intentionally, maliciously lied. It is so hard to win a defamation suit, and Dominion won. So I guess Lindell's is still going on. And he's been through a bunch of depositions over it and everything. We're going to talk about that, too, in a second. But he just, I guess, didn't have any money to pay lawyers in 2023. Had to fire them.
My Pillow, what American Express did, just devastating our credit. And
American Express, he claims, took his line of credit and closed his credit card. I don't even know if that's true.
We have to, I can't pay the lawyers. We can't pay. There's no money left to pay them.
So anyway, back to what's going on now with his AI-generated legal filing. Let's give it a read. It's on New Republic, released April 25th, 2025. The only legal representation available to Mike Pillow, available to Mike Pillow's CEO and ardent election denier Mike Lindell is apparently completely fake. Attorneys for the longtime Donald Trump ally are facing possible discipline for filing an AI-generated brief with fabricated legal citations in order to defend their client. Yeah, he got new lawyers. When he went on this is on Real America's Voice. I think it was on Steve Bannon's show. And some other team agreed to represent him pro bono, to my understanding. They said, we'll protect your free speech rights, whatever stupid. So he fired his existing lawyers and he got new lawyers who were working for free pretty much. And I guess they got sick of working for free, ? And started doing AI generated briefs. Oh my God, dude. It's so stupid. After facing accusations from a federal judge, Lindell and his legal team confessed to turning in a brief with nearly 30 defective citations. Oh my God, that's bad. One of Lindell's attorneys, Christopher Kachuroff, never seen that before, claimed that he personally outlined and wrote a draft of a brief before utilizing generative artificial intelligence. Totally, according to a legal filing. That final draft, however, pointed to legal cases that never happened. This is why you always check your work. Certainly always check AI's work. Are you kidding me with this? How did they not know that this is what happens? You cannot use AI to write legal briefs. You cannot do it. Don't. Oh my God. U.S. District Court Judge Nina Wong has given Kachuroff and Lindell's other attorney, Jennifer DeMaster, until May 5th to prove why they should not face disciplinary proceedings and lose their legal licenses. Oh my God, dude, they are in bad shape. It is shockingly not the first time that Kachuroff has been caught with his pants down. Oh boy, don't say that. Last year, the attorney was literally caught without any pants during a break in a Zoom court hearing in which he was representing another election denier. Okay. Literally caught with no pants. Lindell is accused of undermining U.S. democracy and leveraging his connection to Trump to boost his polyfoam pillow sales. At one point, the MAGA businessman's company was generating as much as $300 million in annual revenue, according to court filings. But by mid-April, Lindell claimed he still owed $70 million in debt and that his income had plummeted to $1,000 a week. Is that in a court filing that he claimed that? I'm not sure. His income plummeted to $1,000 a week? Well, what's his net worth? I mean, he can still sell properties and stuff that he owns. Last week, Lindell told a federal judge he couldn't afford to pay $50,000 in sanctions in one of the long-standing election fraud cases against him, and that he was financially in ruins over the lawsuits, as nobody will lend to him anymore. Not one dime, Lindell said. Well, why the f*** do you think that is? How do you think we got here, Mike? You're just completely in the dark on this one? You have no idea? There's nothing? You can't conjure a single thing that could help you figure out why we're in this situation now, really? Every part of this was Mike Lindell's doing. I would have sympathy for him if he weren't directly involved in fraud schemes and lies and intentional knowing criminality around the election. I'll prove it in a second. MyPillow's been struggling since Lindell aggressively saddled himself up to flip Trump's 2020 election loss. Right. It's not just that he supported Trump in 2020. It's that he stole voter data illegally. He illegally donated to people's campaigns and a whole bunch of other stuff. You'll see what I'm talking about in a second. According to Lindell, his infomercial-heavy product lost $100 million in revenue after it was dropped by shopping networks and retailers, had its credit limit downsized by American Express, and had to auction off thousands of pieces of equipment. Last February, the company also lost a place to lay its head, facing eviction from its warehouses after Lindell failed to pay rent at the company's Minnesota facilities. Holy shit, dude. The former millionaire spent months using every platform at his disposal to seed conspiracy theories following the 2020 presidential election, including against Dominion voting systems and Smartmatic, knowingly, intentionally lying about them. It wasn't just he was mistaken. They were lies. And that's why he's going to lose this defamation lawsuit. He destroyed their reputation intentionally, even though he knew that it wasn't true. That's illegal. Well, that is a civil offense, and you can sue the shit out of somebody for it. Including against Dominion voting systems and Smartmatic, claiming the electronic voting companies were complicit in a scheme to keep Trump from retaking the White House. That, however, cost Lindell $5 million and made him a major target in a $1.3 billion defamation suit brought by Dominion, in which Lindell is being sued not just for spreading the lies, but also for attempting to profit off of them. That's absolutely insane. I'm so glad that I found out about this. Okay, now let's talk about some of the shit that Lindell did. Okay, there's a woman named Tina Peters. She was a county clerk. I unraveled this whole web on my channel forever ago. If you want to go down this rabbit hole, just search my channel for Doug Frank, Tina Peters, and Mike Lindell. And I connect all the dots. Those three people worked together. This is Tina Peters, county clerk of Mesa County, Arizona, I believe. And there was never a chance of Mesa County, Arizona flipping anything. It just wasn't going to flip it for Trump. It just wasn't. Trump lost in 2020. He lost 5 swing states, I believe. So he had to flip Georgia and Arizona and Pennsylvania and the others. I don't even remember now. And it just wasn't going to happen. One state, if it had just been Arizona, he might have been able to weasel his way into it over the few months between when the election happened and January 20th, but not 5 swing states. Tina Peters is the county clerk of Mesa, Arizona, where all of these election lies were centered. And she basically helped somebody steal private voter data. If you guys remember, back in 2021, a list appeared on 4chan and Reddit and, Telegram and all these Trump places, spheres, a list of voters who are dead or not real or immigrants. It was a big list of voters with addresses and everything. And Mike Lindell was circulating that list. Well, that list was a list of actual real voters who really did vote and they really were alive. It came from Tina Peters facilitating the theft of the voter database, basically. So they steal this data and they pass it around, to Lindell and to a whole bunch of other people. And Lindell, continues on to fund Tina Peters' election in the state after that and a bunch of stuff. Tina Peters flew to Washington, D.C. on Lindell's jet on January 6th when all that stuff was going down. They're all very connected to each other, right? So anyway, Tina Peters was facing a felony, and I think she is in prison now for 9 years. I believe she got 9 years. This isn't about Peters, though, but just listen to, her connection to Lindell.
For Republican Mesa County Clerk Tina Peters, she faces felony charges accused of tampering with her county's election equipment. She also has to answer to an ethics complaint, accusing her of accepting more money in gifts for her legal defense than an elected leader is allowed by the state constitution. Support for Peters comes in the form of the Pillow Guy.
Mr. Lindell, how much have you raised for Tina Peters' legal defense fund?
So I believe if you're not a family member or a close friend, you can't donate more than $50 to the campaign.
I just put all the money in myself.
Uh-oh.
How much is that?
I don't know. I probably put in 3, 4, 5, maybe 800,000 of my own money.
Uh-oh. He better establish their close personal friends real fucking fast, right?
Unless you're a close friend or family member of an elected leader, you're limited in how much you can gift.
You can only give someone a gift of $65 per calendar year.
Jane Feldman was once executive director of the Independent Ethics Commission. Now she's part of the legal team in the ethics complaint against Peters. And if Peters receives more than she's allowed, she could be fined twice the amount. So if Lindell really gave her $800,000 to pay for her legal defense, the fine could be expensive.
That's $1.6 million.
But there is wiggle room if Lindell is a close friend. Except listen to how he answered a question about flying Peters around on his personal plane last year.
I'll give rides from people all over the country. I had never met Tina Peters.
Oopsie daisy. Oh, I love it, dude. I love it when they hang themselves like this. It is the best. God, I love this clip.
That's what the plane ride you're talking about. She came to the cyber symposium with a group from Colorado. I picked people up. I invited all 50 states. All 50 states were represented. There's your answer. Another stupid question by a stupid journalist.
What an idiot, right? Oh my God, I love this to death, man. I'm sorry. It's just so good.
But here's why it's not a stupid question.
If you had just met her, you weren't a close friend of hers.
I just met her that day.
Oh, dig that hole deeper, Mike. Dig it deeper.
Another dumb question.
If he said he had just met her and they had no prior relationship, it's very hard to argue that he was a personal friend.
Oh, I love that so much. Anyway, the point is that Mike Lindell knew what he was doing and was doing it intentionally. He was breaking the law, not specifically with this thing, but he broke the law when working with Tina Peters to steal voter data, to pass it around to people, disseminate it, if you will. He intentionally, knowingly lied about people and companies because he wanted to. And he got a ton of for it, like lots of legal trouble. He was leaning on Donald Trump winning in 2020 and then pardoning him. But that didn't happen, obviously. So he had to find his way through without that. And I find it super interesting that he's not being pardoned right now for a bunch of other stuff. Although the Dominion lawsuit that is like destroying his bank account, that's civil. He can't be pardoned for that. But, you know what? I'm not even sure if he's got any criminal offenses on his record. He certainly should. He's certainly committed crimes.
Today, the FBI, you're going to hear this, and you're probably already hearing it in the news. The FBI came after me and took my phone. They surrounded me at a Hardee's and took my phone that I run all my business, everything with. They could have just, what they've done is weaponize the FBI. It's disgusting. I don't have a computer. Everything I do have that phone, everything was on there, and they told me not to tell anybody.
I bet. Yeah, they said don't tell anybody. Yeah, absolutely.
There's an order don't tell anybody. Okay, I won't. Well, I am. So, there you go.
So stupid, dude. I'm sorry. It's just so stupid. Anyway, the point is that this is 100% completely and totally deserved. Every last bit of this. He did all of it to himself. And if he really is making $1,000 a week, is that what he said? $1,000 a week? Like, I don't want to see anybody suffer, but you are a direct contributor to the downfall of democracy in the United States. And whatever it takes to prevent you from destroying democracy, just about, I'm okay with. If it means you start making, a normal wage that other people make, $4,000 a month, fantastic. I'm all for it. I'm down. Start living like the rest of us for once. Tell what you think about it in the comments. It's just, God, this guy is so entertaining because he gets himself in so many stupid situations. We'll be right back. Don't forget to check out my Patreon. Also, take a look at my website, owenmorgan.com. I just finished writing a book titled Was Hitler an Atheist? It talks about religions during the Third Reich and how they work together. Catholics, Jehovah's Witnesses, and Protestants. And I even address the lies told by the evangelical world about Bonhoeffer. It's on Audible and Amazon. Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, is going down like a really disturbing road. She says they're basically announcing a task force to tackle anti-Christian bias in society. Check this out.
Thank you all for joining us today. We're excited to be here for the launch of the Task Force to Eradicate Anti-Christian Bias as outlined in the President's Executive Order. Joining me today are members of the task force and individuals who have been impacted by the anti-Christian bias. Together,
this is a clear indication that they are working closely with Christian nationalists, which we already knew. They're implementing Project 2025, which was written by Christian nationalists for Christian nationalists. So none of this surprises me. It's disturbing to watch it unfold, By the way, guys, check out my new shop, owenmorgan.com/shop. I have a bunch of really cool designs on there. You know what disturbs me the most about this, about what she's doing right now? All right, this is a New Republic article. Trump Department of Justice ordered ICE to invade homes without a search warrant. The Justice Department quietly invoked the Alien Enemies Act last month to give Immigration and Customs Enforcement ICE agents the power to conduct warrantless searches of people's homes as long as they suspect them to be an alien enemy, quote unquote. USA Today obtained the memo that contained this order on Friday. Quote, as much as practicable, officers should follow the proactive procedures above and have an executed warrant of apprehension and removal before contacting an alien enemy, the memo reads. However, that will not always be realistic or effective in swiftly identifying and removing alien enemies. An officer may encounter a suspected alien enemy in the natural course of the officer's enforcement activity, such as when apprehending other validated members of Tren de Aragua. Given the dynamic nature of enforcement operations, officers in the field are authorized to apprehend aliens upon a reasonable belief that the alien meets all four requirements to be validated as an alien enemy. This authority includes entering an alien enemy's residence to make an AEA apprehension where circumstances render it impracticable to first obtain a signed notice and warrant of apprehension and removal. The point is, they are now legally, the Department of Justice has now instructed them to enter people's homes with or without a search warrant. That is a violation of the Fourth Amendment, a right against unreasonable search and seizure. This is exactly what the Constitution was written to protect us from. Now, she's talking about anti-Christian bias here. Pam Bondi was. By the way, she's the head of the Department of Justice, so I believe that she's the one that signed that in the first place. That document telling people to go into, to violate people's Fourth Amendment rights. Lawyer, by the way, knows what she's doing. Now, she's sitting here talking to us about anti-Christian bias, and it may just be lip service. I don't know, because they're very zeroed in on immigrants right now. But Martin Niemöller, the head of the church in Germany that was opposed to Hitler in the 30s, famously wrote a poem that said, first they came for the communists, and I said nothing because I wasn't a communist. Then they came for the socialists, and I said nothing because I wasn't a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I said nothing because I wasn't a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I said nothing because I wasn't a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me. They're very zeroed in on immigrants at this moment. But this whole anti-Christian bias thing, quote unquote, it's in their crosshairs. And I absolutely, for sure, most definitely fall into that category. And she's already prepared to enter people's homes without a search warrant to get quote unquote alien enemies. Who is going to be next? I say this with all sincerity, and this may actually be putting me in crosshairs even further. It's time to start hiding people. For real. Where was the line in World War II in Germany in the 30s when people needed to start hiding others? There are countless images of immigrants, which were the Jews at the time. They were called immigrants and aliens. Really. Countless pictures of these immigrants in Germany, quote unquote, running for their lives, being chased by brown shirts, by Gestapo. Nowhere to go. It is time to start hiding people. And the day may come where I'm one of those people you have to hide, so keep a bed warm for me.
Together, this task force will identify any unlawful anti-Christian policies, practices, or conduct across the government, seek input from the faith-based organizations and state governments to end anti-Christian bias.
What anti-Christian bias? Seriously, there is no anti-Christian bias, okay? Something like, 70-something% of the country is Christian. I guess maybe it's a little different now since you've renditioned a bunch of conservative Catholic South Americans to a concentration camp. That certainly changed the demographics of the country, but it's somewhere in there.
Find and fix deficiencies in existing and regulatory practices that might contribute to the anti-Christian bias. As President Trump has stated, the Biden administration engaged in an egregious pattern of targeting peaceful Christians while ignoring violent anti-Christian offenses.
Complete bullshit. What are you talking about? Anti-Christian offenses? Ignoring? What anti-Christian offenses? She's about to give us some examples that are complete nonsense. We'll talk about in a second. But the problem is that these people have always believed that, they've always had a persecution complex. I mean, Christian nationalists specifically. They've always had a persecution complex, convinced everyone's always out to get them. In Germany, there was this anti-Christian fear that grew also. Fascist movements always have some element of fear behind them because fear makes people act irrationally and suspend logical thought.
The president is right. Biden's Department of Justice abused and targeted Christians. Pro-life Christians were arrested and imprisoned for peacefully praying outside abortion clinics.
That is not true. They busted their way into the abortion clinic, if I remember correctly. It's not even an abortion clinic. It's a, what was it? Let me find it. Yeah, here it is. This is it. This is on AP News. Anti-abortion activists convicted for blockading a reproductive health clinic, not for praying there. We'll hit it in a second. Keep listening.
The FBI spied on traditional Catholics in their parishes.
Not true. That did not happen. I remember this. I remember what she's even talking about. The FBI was working with the Catholic priest to take down like a pedophile ring or something like that, if I remember correctly. And what was it? Significant controversy involving the FBI's surveillance activities targeting Catholic churches. In early 2023, a leaked internal memo from the FBI's Richmond field office revealed plans to monitor radical traditionalist Catholics, or RTCs. I remember now, whom the agency associated with political domestic terrorism threats. The memo suggested leveraging Catholic parishes and diocesan leadership as avenues for developing sources and gathering intelligence. Yeah. That was the bottom line. And there are radical traditionalist Catholics that are absolutely insane. They're out of their minds. Literal domestic terrorists. J.D. Vance is a Catholic. And we can all see very clearly that he's absolutely insane. So anyway, they were specifically working on that specific project. And regarding the anti-abortion activist convicted for blockading a reproductive health clinic, check this out. Here's the claim. A 75-year-old woman named Paulette Harlow was sentenced to 2 years in prison for praying outside an abortion clinic in Washington. That's Pam Bondi's claim. AP's assessment, false. Harlow was convicted in August 2023 of federal civil rights offenses for her role in the October 2020 invasion and blockade of the Washington Surgery Clinic. Along with other anti-abortion activists, Harlow used force and physical obstruction to execute the blockade, according to the Department of Justice. She was sentenced to 24 months in prison on Friday. This is in 2024. Social media users are misrepresenting Harlow's crimes, alleging that she's being put behind bars because she chose to pray beside the clinic. It's just not true. It's not what happened. Like, these people can live in an alternate reality all they want, but I'm not going to live there with them. Anyway, listen to what she said one more time here.
The president is right. Biden's Department of Justice abused and targeted Christians. Pro-life Christians were arrested and imprisoned for peacefully praying outside abortion clinics.
Like, it wouldn't even be true if that one case happened, because she used the plural, Christians, multiple. Like, there aren't multiple incidences of Christians being arrested for praying or whatever. There isn't even one.
The FBI spied on traditional Catholics in their parishes.
Again, a lie. It was a memo passed around talking about how to deal with domestic terrorism, specifically.
President Biden declared Easter Sunday to be Transgender Day of Visibility.
No, he didn't. Another flat-out, bald-faced lie. It's just a lie. There's no like grain of truth here. There's no underlying nothing. It was just a lie. Trans Visibility Day or whatever the hell it was called has been on the same day for like ever, for decades, right? Easter changes from year to year, obviously. I think one year it fell on Trans Visibility Day. Okay, so like, I don't understand what your hang up is here.
No longer. Vandalism against churches was 8 times higher in 2023 than it was in 2018.
I'm assuming that's another lie. I'm not even sure. Let's keep listening.
And it's at President Trump's directive, we ended those abuses at the Department of Justice on day one. We dropped 3 ongoing cases against pro-lifers and redefined the FACE Act to ensure that abuse would not continue and that American tax dollars were not used to support the weaponization of our legal system to target Christians.
Absolutely disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. I'm just looking at this attacks on U.S. churches claim here. See what I can find out about it. Attacks on churches were 8 times higher in 2023 than in 2018. There's this thing called p-hacking. It's a method of lying with statistics. It's basically where you take a graph and you cut a piece of the graph off and then just show this one very selective little segment that looks absolutely insanely terrible. Why did she choose 2018 and 2023 of all things to compare? We're in 2025. Why didn't she pick 2024? And why 2018? Why not 2023 and 2024? I don't understand. It's because she's p-hacking, almost guaranteed. I'm taking a look here. Yeah, I can't figure out what the deal is or like what the I don't know why they would pick 2018 and 2023. That's confusing. And the only people that like the only place that I can find this data is from like far right nutcases. I'm not seeing it from any trustworthy sources, like not even one. I'm trying hard, but yeah, I'm just not seeing any trustworthy data. I mean, I would have to sit here for another like 20 minutes and find trustworthy data. Everything that I found is from like Family Research Council, which is a far right extremist group. Or God, what are some of the others that were suggested? Washington Times, the Epic Times. The Epic Times is a far right like cult newspaper, a paper that is owned by a cult that operates in New York City. I can't find anything trustworthy on it, but the point is that she is absolutely for sure, most definitely p-hacking right now. There is no Christian bias. As far as I can tell, it's in the low hundreds, the number of attacks on churches. Anyway, now when you start with the low hundreds, say 300 attacks over the course of a year, for example, I don't know what it is. So you have 300 and it increases to 400. That's a 25% jump and it seems dramatic, but you're still within an order of magnitude. It's like they say trans youth percentages are up by like, 200 or 300%. 300% more trans kids than there were just 2 years ago. When you're dealing with like 12, that's not surprising. It's not that big of a deal when you go from like 12 to 30 or something. Anyway, yeah. Tell me what you think about it in the comments. It's just so disgusting to see this anti-Christian bias thing. And it kind of disturbs me and concerns me for what happens next. We'll be right back. Don't forget to check out my Patreon. Also, take a look at my website, owenmorgan.com. I just finished writing a book titled Was Hitler an Atheist? It talks about religions during the Third Reich and how they work together. Catholics, Jehovah's Witnesses, and Protestants. And I even address the lies told by the evangelical world about Bonhoeffer. It's on Audible and Amazon. This is ICE literally arresting a child and putting the child in handcuffs. You don't handcuff a child. What is wrong with these people? There is a degree of moral depravity that we have reached as a country that is just wild. I don't know what to do with this. She is by no stretch of the imagination the only child caught up in this, in what ICE is doing. Here's the thing. mass deportation to a degree that's happening right now under the Trump administration necessarily leads to really vile, like ugly, disgusting, horrific situations. You're taking children's parents away and they have nobody to live with anymore. For example, that's in some cases. That's in a lot of cases. And on occasion, you get things like this right here. Now, when you do deportations or renditions, is what I think we should be calling them. When you're doing renditioning like this, sending them to a concentration camp or wherever it is you're sending them, you know, the government needs to have a degree of empathy when dealing with this and go case by case to see, like, is it really worth what we're doing here? Can we put this person on a path to citizenship instead because they have like a child here and they have a life and they're a taxpayer and they're, you know, contributing to society and everything? They're not dangerous. They're good people. Can we put them on a path to citizenship? They're helping our economy a lot. You're supposed to have those types of thoughts or those analyses when you're, you know, doing this renditioning in government. But here we are on the other side, and Donald Trump he doesn't. There's no deeper thought. There's no respect. There's no thinking about, you know, what the ramifications are. There's just literally arresting children. This kid had to go to an immigration trial alone. He's like 4.
Are you a little nervous this morning? See? Do you understand what these proceedings here in court are all about?
He shook his head no for the audio audience. No, he has no idea what's going on. It's just a little, maybe 4-year-old boy sitting here alone. No one else around him.
You know what a lawyer is?
No. No, he doesn't. He doesn't know what a lawyer is. He doesn't know what any of this is. There's nobody sitting in the chair next to him. What the f***? Now, I don't really blame the judge here. You know, this case was put before him. He doesn't really have a whole lot of say in that. But why are we doing this? Like, why are we sending children through the legal system, through courthouses like this? This is insane. The degree of moral depravity is at an all-time low. It is at an all-time low to put a kid in handcuffs like this. What the f***? Like I said, it's a necessary component to mass renditions like we're seeing right now. And Trump doesn't give a shit about any of that. You know, people were upset about kids in cages. Look at what we're seeing now. You know, Trump supporters were disturbed by kids in cages. What about now? The degree of moral depravity has no bottom. Okay, that was just a couple of kids. There's more. This is Stephen Miller, literal Nazi. One of Trump's top people. I don't even remember what he is or what he does.
More that were allowed to either fly into the country or overstay their visas. It is a clear and present danger to the national security of this country. And we have federal judges telling President Trump that he can't deport these threats from our communities.
That's not what anybody was saying. Okay, I'm not sure which specific case he's talking about, but they need due process. They need to go through the court system. That's probably the one he's talking about. They need to be able to, they need it adjudicated. Are they actually members of a gang? Are they contributing members to society? Are they citizens? Maybe they are. You don't know because you didn't send them through a court system. You have no clue. There have been at least a couple of cases where ICE went to pick somebody up and they were with their cousin in their car. The cousin's driving and ICE grabs the cousin too because he has dark skin. And they put him into the system. Doesn't matter if he's a U.S. citizen. It's irrelevant. They just throw him in the system and send him to El Salvador. I mean, I guess it kind of depends on what they're doing now. I'm not sure what they're doing. But Trump is definitely telling Bukele to build more concentration camps in El Salvador. This kid right here, U.S. citizen, full, like, naturalized, as in he was born in America, U.S. citizen, taken by ICE and kept for 10 days. Nobody knew where he was or what was going on or anything at all, and they refused to release him. 10 days. Wrong place, wrong time. And they didn't give him a court hearing. Just threw him in there. No due process. And they had no way of even figuring out if he was a U.S. citizen because they don't give him due process. That is what Stephen Miller is calling for. Not just for, people suspected of gang activity, but for children. For children. People aren't getting due process. So as the Nazi that he is, he's going to twist this around where people should be getting court hearings to determine who they are and if they have any association with anything. And he's going to twist it around to be about him and Trump and how they're being hurt or something.
Judges telling President Trump that he can't deport these threats from our communities? This is the choice facing every American. Either we all side and get behind President Trump to remove these terrorists from our communities.
They're not terrorists. They're just people. And even if they were terrorists, you have no way of knowing that because you refuse to send them through a court system.
Or we let a rogue, radical left judiciary shut down the machinery of our national security apparatus. President Trump is going to see this through to his conclusion, and we will find and remove every terrorist from this country, and President Trump will make this nation safer than ever before, and he'll do it over the fighting and opposition of the Democrat Party, over the fighting and opposition of the communist left-wing judges, over the fighting and opposition of the far-left federal bureaucracy. He will not be deterred, Sean. He will see this through, I promise you.
Again, this is like identical to what happened in Germany, if anybody cares, talking about communist judges, communist threats. Hitler talked about communists nonstop. If you didn't support what he was doing to the immigrants of the time, the Jews, who were quote unquote the aliens in the region, if you didn't support him doing that, you were a communist. Again, I have to clarify, the Jews were not actually immigrants. They lived there for hundreds of years, but Hitler called them immigrants. Like, this whole thing was about this regime's moral depravity. I just want to, drive home how absolutely deeply morally depraved we have become, or how depraved the U.S. government has become. Say you go to an ice cream shop and you buy an ice cream cone and the guy makes it, and as he's walking over to you to hand it to you, he trips and falls and the ice cream falls on the floor. Our moral system in the United States dictates that he has a responsibility to replace that ice cream, even though he already took the ice cream out. So the company is out the ice cream now, and your money is already in their register. So you are out the money. The transaction has taken place, but our moral system dictates that he must make us whole, right? That's not the case everywhere. Like in some countries that happens, you just don't get your ice cream anymore. Or like we have a moral system where if something doesn't work, if it's broken out of the box, you return it and you get your money back. That's not the case everywhere. We are living in a moral system now that is changing rapidly into something that the majority of the United States people don't recognize anymore or will not recognize. The Trump administration, the regime, is eroding moral norms. They're eroding things that we would expect. Those examples I gave, those are innocuous. Those are just like, whatever, who cares about that? But to arrest children and send them through a court system with no parent, no nothing, that is a moral low that we would not have accepted 4 years ago, or even maybe a year ago. I'm just trying to point out how morally depraved the U.S. has become, the government in the U.S., and that we need to keep our heads on to make sure that we don't spiral down the same moral drain. This is something else that wouldn't have been acceptable just last year. Stu Peters. I hope he doesn't say a slur in this. He does that a lot.
This country doesn't have a racism problem. We don't have a gun problem. We don't have a poverty problem that's causing mass violence. What we have here is a black problem. We have a problem with black crime. This is a group of people that comprise...
You notice how he emphasized people that way? A group of people I'm super concerned he's going to say a slur. I guess I'll cut it later if I need to. This would have been unacceptable just last year, just 1 year ago. The degree of moral decay happened quicker than I thought it would.
As 12 to 13% of the entire United States population, but commits more than half of all of its violent crime.
He's talking about a Nazi statistic that I'll talk about in a second.
You're more likely to be murdered by a black woman than you are by a white man. You're more likely to be murdered by a rich...
Most of this is not true, by the way, but again, Nazi statistics, we'll hit it in a second. Just keep listening.
...by a rich black person than by a poor white. They are overrepresented in every single criminal statistic you could possibly think of. It's unsustainable. Yet it shows no signs of stopping. And as the Carmelo Anthony saga and all of these other cases play out, you can rest assured we're going to see more violence. We're going to see more viral news stories. We're going to see more black victimhood. We're going to see more attacks on whites. And that's not fear-mongering. That's just the truth. It's time that we have a national conversation about the problem that we have with blacks.
So, yeah, that's Stu Peters. He is a full-blown Nazi, like I said. These statistics that he's citing are false in most cases, cherry-picked at best. But the one that I wanted to zero in on is 1350. That's the most popular argument, 1350. 13% of the population, the black community, commits 50% of the violent crimes. First of all, that is cherry-picked. Why would you pick a very specific subset of crime? Anyway, here's the bottom line. The black community is overrepresented in certain crimes per capita. But why is that? It's one of two reasons. It can only be one of two. Either it's because there's an underlying social problem. If that's the case, it can be fixed. You know, we can put money into building up black communities. We can try to equal things out more. We can pump money into like education and stuff, you know, build up their schools in areas that are predominantly black and things like that. Either it's social and it can be fixed, or it's genetic. And if you believe it's genetic, then you're a Nazi. Plain and simple. That was Hitler's belief. He believed people were genetically inferior. You are a eugenicist if you believe that incorrectly. The answer is, of course, there is an overrepresentation because of societal issues, and it can and should be fixed. We should be working on building up the communities to make things better, to make people's lives better, to make sure that police officers are not singling black kids out. You know, that's why gangs formed in the first place in the United States originally, whenever it was. They formed as a protection, a means of protection for people in black communities. They would follow each other around after work to make sure that they got home safe and they weren't beaten to by the police. Anyway, in 1923, I think, there's a guy named Thomas Hunt Morgan. He was a researcher for Columbia University, I believe, if I remember correctly. I wrote about this at length in my book, Was Hitler an Atheist, if you want to read about it. But Thomas Hunt Morgan, by the way, it's on Amazon and Audible, but Thomas Hunt Morgan is a researcher at Columbia Law. He studies fruit flies. And this fruit fly experiment is famous in young earth creationist circles because he used radiation in one of his studies to try to change the genes of a fruit fly and selectively breed it to so on and so forth. Basically, through all of his studies, he was assigned to be a eugenicist. He was assigned to study the benefits of eugenics and how it can be used positively. That when I say eugenics, I mean artificially guided selection for the best genes. The version of eugenics that we know today is the one that Hitler employed, which is not just selective breeding, but selectively killing people with supposed bad genes. Well, Thomas Hunt Morgan wasn't doing that. He was just selecting, or he was just trying to select for certain genes through breeding. And what he discovered is that it just doesn't work. It just doesn't work. Eugenics is a dead end. It was always a dead end. He quit his job at Columbia University because they insisted he continue to pursue the studies, and that's just not how it works, plain and simple. Well, Hitler saw how dogs were bred, and you could breed a temperament into a dog. You know, you could make them mean or nice or friendly or emotionally intelligent or, you know, intellectually intelligent or whatever. And he said, why don't we do that with humans? The problem with that is the genes in dogs that affect their personality are largely monogenic. Like there are multiple genes that control their personality, but way, way fewer than in humans. It's just a few it's just a few genes that you have to select for when you're breeding a dog to change your temperament. With human beings, there are thousands of genes that need to change our temperament or whatever. We've been selectively breeding dogs for 10,000 years, and there has been no selective breeding in human beings. Not artificially, not intentionally like that. So basically, you'd have to start from square one, and maybe in 10,000 years, if you kept up a selective breeding program of humans for the sake of eugenics, maybe then you could have something like that. But it just doesn't work that way. Evolution just doesn't work that way. You know, Hitler tried to cut off the bad genes. Like you have a bad heart or something, he kills you. You have you catch cholera or something, kills you. That's it. That's not how it works. How are you helping anything by doing that? We have cures. People can be cured of this shit. You know, the belief of the Nazis was you shouldn't need, for example, penicillin because you should be able to just overcome strep throat on your own, and that's it. And if you don't, then you're weak and you should just die. That's the kind of thing, that's the kind of, like, belief system that Hitler adhered to, that the Nazis adhered to. And that is the belief system that Stu Peters, for example, also believes in. When he's espousing this stuff about black people committing half the crimes or whatever, he's saying they are genetically inferior, genetically bred to be violent. It's pseudoscience. It's nonsense. And it's literal Nazi. I'm running out of time, but there's one more clip that I want to talk about here because it relates heavily to the Nazis and how they operated. Listen to this woman right here.
I just had dinner with a friend that works for Catholic Charities of Dallas, Texas. Okay? Stick with me here. This is going to disturb all of you.
Catholic Charities are generally, for the most part, not super heavy conservative, but they can be.
They just got a letter from the tip top of the people in Washington telling them that they would not get money to help their charitable organization feed people.
I.e., I assume that she's saying they will lose their tax-exempt status or they won't get government grants to feed homeless, for example, or take care of children.
If they did not give up all of the names, addresses, and information of all of the El Salvadorian, I can't even do it. I can't even talk about it because it makes me want to cry. She said she is so torn, but it came down from up above that they have to give them up.
Give up the names of the El Salvadorans, I guess. Give up the names of immigrants that they work with is what she's saying. That is exactly identical to what happened in Germany. Again, if anybody cares anymore, it's identical. You know, they tried to get lists of people early on, and a lot of people cooperated with that whole listing thing because they thought if they just put their name on a fucking list, then it'd be over. You know, fine, I'm on your list. Okay. For example, in Germany. They said anybody that has Jewish ancestry and has more than $5,000 in assets, you have to declare those assets. And they say, okay, fine, whatever, I'll declare it. They put their name on the list. Now, Germany has a big list of all of the Jewish people in the area and all of the money that they have. They tried to get lists of people by other means, any means that they possibly could, and then they started hunting them down. They were strong-arming, blackmailing, and otherwise trying to force charities to give up names as well in this exact same way. Again, identical. I know you don't want me to say that Trump is like a Nazi or whatever, but what do you expect me to say when this is happening? What do you expect from me? What am I supposed to call him?
They have to give up all of their information if they want the money to help everyone. How is this what we are living in? How is this what is happening?
Complete moral breakdown. We are witnessing full moral depravity unfold. And it is absolutely wild to see, and more important now than ever to keep our own moral grounding in check. Do not let yourself go down this path of absolute moral depravity. It's gonna be a challenge for some people to have everybody around you saying something that they wouldn't have said 5 years ago, and you not start and you holding on to the fact that it's absolutely disgusting and evil and wrong. It's gonna be hard when everyone around you is gaslighting you practically. Anyway, tell me what you think about it in the comments. Just wild, man. That's all I've got for you. If you like what I do and you want to see me continue to do it, don't forget to check me out on Patreon. I just finished writing a book titled Was Hitler an Atheist? It talks about religions during the Third Reich and how they work together. Catholics, Jehovah's Witnesses, and Protestants. And I even address the lies told by the evangelical world about Bonhoeffer. It's on Audible and Amazon. Okay, thanks for watching, guys.